Welcome. We'll get started shortly. Before we begin, here's how to earn continuing professional education credit for attending this session. There are no polling questions or attendance checks. Instead, you will demonstrate your knowledge by taking a brief multiple-choice quiz using the Earmark app. Visit earmark.app in your web browser. You can also download the mobile app by scanning the QR code on the screen. Log in, or if you're new, create your free account. Be sure to use a valid email address because that's where we'll send your course completion certificates. From the home screen, scroll down to find the course. You can also tap the magnifying glass icon to search for the course. Tap on the course artwork, then the Enroll button. On the Course tab, you'll find the recording and quiz questions. Complete the quiz to earn your CPE certificate. It takes us a few days to create the course on the app, so if you are attending this session live, please wait a few days. We'll email you a link to the course when it is ready. If you have questions or need help, email us at support@earmarkcpe.com. And now, on to the event.
Well, hi everyone, and thank you very much for joining. If you're joining us live, it's delightful that you found the time, and if you're watching the recording, it's wonderful that you're here. We're talking about time management today. You know, it's interesting. Every one of us gets the same allocation of time in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year, and some people use it more wisely than others, perhaps, and that boosts their productivity. And often that means they have more fun, they get more enjoyment out of their business and their non-business matters. So that's what we're investigating today in light of the ever-evolving accounting profession, of course. So I look forward to spending the next 45 minutes to an hour with you. Here's what we'll run through: a quick introduction, because we're relatively new to the Earmark environment. By the way, a big shout out to the Earmark team for hosting us today. And then the premise for today's webinar: why is this important? The rationale for what we're going to talk about. And then I'd like to get into some influences and particularly some actions. You know, the best outcome today would be that some of you decide to take action based on something that you learn or hear about today. We're going to cover a lot of material, and I think some of it will not be suited to all of your firms. Maybe you're already doing it, maybe you understand it well, but there could be one or two things which will prompt you to take action, and that'll be a good outcome. And then I'll end with a couple of resources which might help you on your way in this journey of boosting productivity through better time management. A very quick introduction. You know, Panalytics has been around for over 20 years now. It wasn't always called that. Panalytics and its predecessors, working exclusively with accountants. We currently serve clients across North America, Northern Europe, Australia, where our headquarters is, and New Zealand, which is our neighbor across the pond, as we like to say. We coach leaders of accounting businesses, managers in accounting business. Some of this is group coaching. We do some one-to-one work, and we offer short courses as short as 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks in some cases. We have a digital community. I urge you to visit that. It's free for the most part, with tools and activities and courses and resources which might help you in the development of your accounting business. And the themes that we typically work with our clients on include better workflow, better processes to increase capacity in the business. And for those that have accomplished that, they may want to grow through better marketing, sales, business development, communication, and so on. And many of the owners of the accounting businesses want to reduce dependence on themselves because they want to free up their own time. And then some of our clients will be thinking about their exit, how they transition out of ownership of their business most effectively. About myself, I'm not an accountant. That's my disclaimer up front. Originally an attorney, but I've had an entrepreneurial career building businesses in information technology and market research, in outsourcing, and I have taken some of those businesses to exits where third-party acquirers have bought the business. And I have now, I started out as chairman of Panalytics. I'm the majority owner of Panalytics, and I'm thoroughly enjoying trying to build Panalytics into the most powerful partner of accounting business owners globally, and enjoying the process immensely. So that's a quick background. Now let's get into today's topic: mastering time management. And here's the premise or the thesis for our discussion today. I feel that this industry, accounting, has enormous opportunities. I think people can build exactly the lives that they want. There are clients who keep coming back to us. There's increased demand for services as business environments grow, as the regulators change the things that our clients need to do, and we have recurring revenue. And if we can get our processes right, there's a way to make a lot of cash in this business and also grow these businesses. So it's really worth being in accounting right now and looking at those opportunities. Of course, there are challenges. And some of you are thinking, yeah, but I can't get people. And what about the investment in technology I need to make? And the regulator keeps changing things, which is both a challenge and an opportunity. This is not new. This is just business. This is how businesses evolve. And it's the people who will take on those challenges who will be most successful. But what I really want to argue today is that time, or a lack thereof, is a challenge we should be able to overcome. This is not an impediment to our growth. And the ones who manage their time better will be the ones who succeed. You know, relatively inexperienced business people will tend to say, I can't get this done because I don't have enough time. And more experienced and successful and sophisticated business people will say, I can't get this done because I don't have enough resources. Resources and time are different. And so we need to manage our time in the best possible way. And that's what we're going to look at in some detail today. Now, I want to suggest to you that there are 3 places we can look when we decide to improve our time management and boost our productivity. And the first is really how we organize ourselves. And I'm talking about our organizations here, the organizations in which we work. And this is often the job of leadership, to make our organizations such that we will be able to work efficiently. And since business is a team sport, it's not individual. Even if you are an individual practitioner, you have to communicate with your clients. We have to think about how we communicate and the best ways to do that. And then the third thing I want to focus on is how we as individuals approach our work, our mindset, our mentality, and the way we go about doing our work. So these are the 3 buckets, if you like, in which I want to talk today. And we're going to start on the left with how we organize our organizations, our businesses, how we structure them. And, you know, in any of these topics, we could spend an entire webinar. So I'm going to get through this material quite quickly. There's a lot more we can discuss at a different time. But the first thing I'd like to mention is delegation. And I'd really like you to think for a second about how you spend your time today in your business. Now, this will depend on your role. Perhaps you're a junior accountant, an intermediate accountant, a business owner, a partner, a manager, a client manager, a receptionist. There's any of those things that you could be, but how do you spend your time? And we tend to think of this in 6 or 7 buckets, if you like. There's administration, there's operations, there's paying bills, there's internal finance, reporting, accounts receivable, accounts payable, cash flow management, etc. Most of you will spend some of your time in production. This is doing work for clients. Keep in mind that there's production which is of a very high level, sophisticated, complex. Not many people can do it. And there's that which is of a relatively intermediate or entry level production work. Some of you will spend your time on managing others, allocating work, quality controlling work, capacity planning, making sure that people are communicating internally, building systems for people so they can see. We call that management or minding. And some of you will have more of a client-facing role where you are building relationships and trying to increase the satisfaction of your clients. Some of you will be out looking for new business, marketing, communication, business development, networking, and so on. And some of you who may be owners are focused on leadership, long-term planning. Perhaps this webinar is a part of your leadership initiative to improve things in your organization. So there are 7 buckets which we find a very useful formula to start thinking about how we spend time. Some of you are thinking, well, that's kind of my job description. I do all of those things. And therein lies a challenge, because we really need to be playing to our strengths. That's really important. We will be much better off if we're doing the things that we're good at. And so Tools like the organizational chart, which describes the positions that are defined in the firm, whether or not they're populated by people today or not, and the job descriptions associated with each of those positions are extremely important in directing us to do the kind of work that we ought to be doing. So we go through some detailed processes with accountants to figure out where they're spending the time now and to try and steer them in directions which play to their strengths and are in accordance with their role or their duties in the business. This is absolutely foundational to productivity and time management. Now, related to that is where exactly are we going with our organization? And let's talk about some targets. So I spoke to some firms recently and just made a list of some example targets. This will seem very obvious to you, but are we growing in a top line sense in our business? And are we growing in a bottom line sense, both our gross and net profit margins, for example? Some firms, and these targets will be different for every business, but some firms will want to attract larger clients, fewer but larger clients, in which case they'll care about the revenue per client. We should all care about our client satisfaction scores. Net promoter score is one way to do that. And what about our team satisfaction scores? Because people say it's hard not only to find people, but to retain people in our organizations. So there are some examples of targets which help us to understand what's important. And then we can get really systemic about pursuing those targets. The more systemic we get, the more likely we will get more consistent and better outcomes for our teams, our clients, and also the business as a whole. And when I think about systems and I think about the clients we work with, the accountants we work with, where are there really good opportunities to systematize? One is in performance management. You know, accountants spend a long time thinking about how they can manage their teams and set goals for team members, review compensation, have policies, particularly with remote work, train people to make them more productive and effective, and so on. And then what about workflow? Obviously, that's a place for systematization, right? How can we, first of all, understand our capacity, develop charge out rates, and then schedule the work and then execute the work in the best interests of the clients? And then, of course, systems for leadership. That's about recruitment. What does your team look like 6 months from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? What growth strategies will you implement, and what does that mean to your business? So a lot of this should be a part of a system rather than something that we make up as we go along, if we are to be time efficient. Now, a cousin, if you like, of systems is checklists and procedures. They are overlapping circles, I'll argue. And I looked in the Panalytics Learning Hub recently, which has got, by the way, literally hundreds of systems, checklists, procedures, which are available to our clients. And I looked at what people are looking for most frequently. And I found that the most frequent group of checklists that were sought after by accountants across the globe, at least the jurisdictions we serve, were on the client-facing side. So client onboarding, how do you make checklists to make that process as palatable for clients as possible? And then ongoing client communication. Obviously, we saw a lot of interest in the work, the production work we do, whether that's development of financial statements, tax preparation, payment of bills, payroll processing. So that's the kind of the grinding work, the production work we do. And the more systematic we can make that, the better. And then on the human resource side, checklists for evaluating candidates, checklists for onboarding new team members, and checklists in advance of a performance review so that we can make that process as efficient as possible. And then some accountants are interested in checklists and procedures for their marketing activities, how they publish content, digital marketing, how they network, and then if they're successful with generating leads, the proposals that will follow. So what we're seeing here are the kinds of checklists which accountants seem to value, and the more they use these, the more likely they are to use their time effectively. Now, whilst we have goals and targets, we also have a more micro look at our business, which is around key performance indicators. And I looked at some firms we're talking to right now, and some things that they greatly value. So productivity hours among the productive team, how much time are they billable? And related to that, how is non-billable time being spent? And that helps us to calculate workflow efficiency, but also from a client point of view, our turnaround times, how many times do we have to, on review, correct our work because it's inaccurate and so on. We've got the revenue and profit growth metrics and the client satisfaction metrics. One of our clients is particularly interested in adopting new technologies and measuring the progress and the process by which people adopt technologies internally. So these are some examples. I'm not suggesting this is the best set of KPIs for every firm, but it's one set that might help to keep a business on track. And finally, in the area of how we organize, it's really important that we hopefully build successful organizations, and then we share the joy of success, because that keeps people energized, it keeps them focused, it makes them want to work better and harder. Now, how do we go about this? Well, rewards and recognition are obviously a part of the puzzle. We compensate people, we give them incentive compensation. But what we have found in our research is that that matters. But if we can have a vision which is compelling and then remind people and have them participate in our vision for the business, we have a much better chance of engaging and energizing them and making them want to work productively. And that's a key aspect here. We also have found in our research that businesses which have a culture of completion of projects, you probably know businesses, maybe some of your clients, where they have 100 things going on, but nothing is kind of getting done completely. There's a lot of open jobs. And if we can create a culture of completion, people take satisfaction and vigor from actually getting things done and completed and moving on to the next thing. So this is an important thing. And to the extent we can encourage teamwork, this has a lot of important implications. One is that people tend to support each other when they're in teams. What are you doing today? How can I help? But it also creates a sense of responsibility, because if I'm only responsible to myself, maybe I will not take things quite as seriously as if I've made commitments and I'm accountable to other people on the team. I don't want to disappoint other people. So teamwork is a multifaceted idea, and it's particularly complex in an increasingly remote business world. But these are some of the things which leaders can focus on. So this is kind of a preamble, if you like. Think of it this way. You can be a member of a sports team and you can work really, really hard on your fitness, on your skills. You can do all of this work. But if your team doesn't get together and practice and plan and work on their fitness, you're probably not going to succeed, no matter how hard you work individually. So we need to think of how our organizations can improve in order to improve time management and boost productivity. Now, the next thing is, in our teams, we need to communicate with one another. It could be our clients, it could be our fellow team members. And one of the things we like to focus on here is the meeting cadence, or the sequence and the content of meetings internally. A lot of time can be wasted here. So a typical cadence we might see is a daily huddle where we just check in. There's a weekly production meeting, what's going on with the clients. There's a weekly marketing meeting, maybe a weekly sales meeting. There's a monthly management meeting. There's an annual offsite meeting to think strategically, and so on. Those are some examples. But whatever the case, each one should have an agenda in minutes. That's common best practices. We like to establish meeting-free zones or days, because we think it's a good idea to have people work in ways that are not distracted by meetings. And some of our clients tell us this has been a really good idea. Remember, meetings are partly to provide updates, but also to create accountability. You want people to declare what they are going to do so that we can track their progress towards that. And this meetings don't have to be drudgery and dreary and problematic and like a sense of time wasting. There's a way to mix it up, and there's a time to just brainstorm and invite ideas and so on. And I think it's really important that our meeting cadence is a cocktail of interesting and different approaches. I do feel the Daily Huddle is one that's highly impactful. If you're not doing this, there's 3 simple questions to ask. What are you doing today? What are the things that you're going to accomplish today? And then what's the metric? Because it's all very well for me to say, yeah, I'm going to work on 5 clients, but what are you going to complete today? How will you measure today's success? And then what are the obstacles? What's holding you back from completing any work? So meetings are really important. I imagine most people watching this spend a lot of time in meetings. So there's an opportunity here to increase productivity. Now, here's a big one. I'd love to do a quick survey and hear how many emails you all have in your inboxes. I'm afraid to say emails is not going away. We've been saying it's going away because Asana and Slack and these other things are going to completely replace it. But I suspect everyone here does a lot of email, and that's not going to change anytime soon. So what are the things we hear from accountants in the context of email? Well, one is this: all I'm doing all day is getting questions from my colleagues, asking me questions about clients, about technical affairs, and I spend a whole lot of time responding to those. My clients also complain that they're not getting either timely or sufficiently detailed replies. And so here I am sitting with these 2,000. We have a client with over 6,000 emails in their inbox. These numbers are not unusual. And what this can lead to is if I try and deal with some of those emails, I might be doing the wrong work. Remember what we said right at the upfront, the delegation idea? If I'm the owner of the business, why am I involved in an email exchange on paying the janitorial services bill or negotiating with the landlord on something? It's not my role. And that can happen because these emails come to me. And this all leaves me feeling stressed, helpless, and I don't know how to stop this because the emails don't stop. They don't say, hey, let's give you a break from emails for a week or 10 days. It doesn't work that way. So how do we address this? And, we run courses on this. We spend a lot of time on this subject. But one way is just to ask how you are tackling email now and what's in your inbox today. And we tend to find these 4 categories which might help you to think about how you deal with email. One is the delete group. It should never have got there. It has no value there. Get rid of it. Some newsletters, some legacy projects and so on might be in that group. There's another group which is, I don't need to take action on this now. I can archive this, put it aside. Maybe I'll snooze it, and in 6 months it'll come up again, or even a week or 4 weeks, but I don't need to do anything with this now. There's a group where I really don't understand what this is about. Someone's asking me half a question, or they've given me not enough information, and I need to inquire so that I can properly process this. And then there's a group where I need to act on this. This is important, and it's my role, it's my job, and I need to take action. So here are some best practices that we have found help people. The first thing is to schedule inbox activity. There's people who are constantly looking over at their inbox. Oh, I've got a new email. Let me go and see what that is. And that is not a good way to do it. We feel email should be tackled at a certain time of day. We also like this rule: touch it once. You only get one chance for most emails. There may be exceptions which are complex and client-facing and so on. But if you look at an email and you read it, deal with it. Don't say, oh, I'll come back to that because I don't really, I've got another email. Let me go to that one. Don't be distracted by the next one. Just deal with it, and you only get one chance. This is the idea, Yesterbox, that until I've dealt with yesterday's emails, I don't get to look at today's. And that kind of helps us to get rid of those ones. Maybe you are part of the problem, by the way. How many emails do you send? Do you send mundane or irrelevant or emails to the wrong people? If you do, you will get some of those back, and maybe you deserve what you get. I say that with half a smile. A lot of emails are about sharing documents, but if we can get more efficient and have a shared environment for documents, we don't need to send as many emails or receive as many. And, a lot of clients say to us, hey, isn't there some software? I read about the software which will just organize all my emails for me, and I won't have any. I've tested a lot of these, and I don't believe that while some of them can help, it's not about technology. It's about process and how you view what's coming into your inbox. And a lot of this comes down to just starting. We've done work with clients where we say, let's copy everything that's in your inbox now, put it in a different place. So you haven't lost anything, don't worry, but your inbox as of now is empty. and let's create new processes so that it remains small. And if we need to go back and look at stuff, those other 2,000, which, surprise, surprise, many of them we never have to look at. So these are processes we go through, and we find we can free a lot of time through better email management. Here's a simple idea. What's the culture in your organization of response times? We feel this is really important. You know, a lot of your clients might complain that slow response times is what they don't like about working with you. We hear this a lot. It's one of the biggest complaints that clients will cite. This leads to kind of a lack of trust and confidence. Have you got your act together over there? Why is it taking so long for me to get a response on something? And remember, this is not just about external communication. This is with your colleagues who are also waiting for your reply on the review you're doing, on the return that they submitted, for which the client is bothering them for an update. So slow response times hold the organization back, and we feel that if we can build a culture of speed, what does that mean? Then we can create a much better environment for response times. Now, this starts early. One of our clients was telling us that from the very first discussion by email with candidates to work in the organization, they start monitoring how quickly people respond, because when a candidate responds quickly about the interview time, it's indicating that they're serious about working with you. And that's when it starts. And we never stop that idea. We reinforce it. We make it part of all discussions. We use end dates to inspire people to complete work by certain times. And we emphasize the importance of speed. Of course, if leaders do this, it's much easier for this to trickle down to the rest of the organization. And then we build systems and policies about speed. Let me give you some examples here. And I'm particularly focused on the ones that involve client communication. This is where we can do a lot better. Now, many of you will have good policies on questions that your clients may ask about their business, around your processes, around a tax question and so on. Maybe some of you have we need to get back to them in 24 hours, for example. But what about deadlines for their work when they have to provide you with information in order for you to do work? Do you have good communication policies on this? Are you reaching out frequently enough and emphatically enough to make sure you get what you need? What about questions which are of an admin nature? You know, these may sound trivial, like a client has a question about an invoice, or they can't log into your portal or something, but they are really irritating, aren't they? You know that, right? When you can't do something because of an admin question, it's actually as frustrating as one of those big questions you want to ask. So what are your policies whereby these are quickly directed to the person who can respond, and that they have to respond in a certain time? Now, sometimes we will have clients who complain. That's part of doing business. And we want to be very responsive, particularly for our A-class clients. We don't want to overreact to complaints from our C-class clients, right? For obvious reasons. We'll come back to that in a second. And sometimes your clients are actually asking for more work. They are wanting to engage you further. And it's really disappointing to me sometimes when I learn that a client's been asking for more services from an accountant that wants to grow their business, and they're saying, well, we haven't got back to them yet because we've got to think about the proposal, and we've got 7 different versions of proposals in our business, and we haven't done a proper discovery, so we don't know what the scope of work is, and we don't know how to price it. And that's a lack of systems related to communication with clients. And if we can do all of that quickly, we will stand out as a business. Now, let's move to the third area here, which is really about us as individuals and how we approach our work. And I want to give you a couple of ideas which may help you. So calendar blocking, right? Sounds pretty obvious, and I think it is. We did some work with some accountants recently, and we said, basically, what is your job? These were senior accountants in $3, $4, $5 million accounting firms. Not necessarily owners, not necessarily partners. And we asked them, what is your job? And here's some things that they told us. They said, well, I prepare some returns, and some of them are relatively simple. I've done it for a few years, and there's nothing particularly complex. There's nothing much that's changed. But then I have some that are more complex, where I may need to think harder, and you will know that the challenge with those two jobs is somewhat different. We have internal meetings in the business. I need to join those on a weekly basis. Perhaps it's the production meeting, the daily huddle. And some of these people are in charge of training a junior accountant. That could be a weekly review of their work and answering their questions, or it could be something even more structured. And these people will tend to say, occasionally I get notes from clients saying, hey, I've got a question on how to structure something in my business or a transaction I want to do. I'd love your thoughts on that. And occasionally we have a rather more serious situation with a client that's at risk. They've asked for a meeting. They're saying that they might take their business elsewhere. They're unhappy with something, etc. And there's probably a role for personal development. I remember some of these people were learning a new software that they were going to use in the upcoming tax season, etc. Maybe it's getting CPE credits and so on, personal development. Some people are involved in marketing in the business, writing. They may have a new client opportunity arising that they need to prepare for because they want to do a good job of presenting their skills. And some of these businesses actually had longer term strategic ideas. One was promoting a new service in estate planning, and they needed to reach out to clients to get feedback and try to set meetings on that. So it was a business development initiative. So now, if you look at that, the brain power we need to use, the methodology, the approach, it's all different. And where do we start? What most people do is they'll start with the easiest stuff that they're most comfortable with, and they'll work through that, and then they'll try to move to the next one. But this is not the best way. Calendar blocking might help us by dividing our time into blocks. That's not difficult. We have usually 5 days a week, maybe 8 hours a day. It'll depend on your terms of engagement. And then we can allocate certain tasks to certain blocks. Also quite a simple concept. And what we're striving for here is to stop us constantly making decisions about what we should be doing next. Looking at this list saying, well, I don't know where to start, right? We should know where to start because we've made some intelligent allocations of time. This also helps us to avoid interruptions, which are a huge productivity burner for accountants. And it helps us to signal to our colleagues, this is what I'm doing now for the next 2 hours. I'm working on complex tax returns. I don't want to deal with your questions about what you're dealing with now, right? So we can get really clear on this, and it helps us with our productivity. Give that a try. Parkinson's law, Northcote Parkinson was a naval historian, and he started thinking about this, I think, in the 50s. The law is pretty simple. It says that the work we do expands to fill the time that is allotted for its completion, right? So if I have 3 hours to do something, I might take almost 3 hours. If I have 1 hour to do the same thing, I'll probably get it done quicker. And obviously, if I get things done quicker, that implies better productivity. And so one of the challenges here is to achieve a balance between what's a reasonable time frame and maximizing productivity, particularly if you're a leader and you are trying to get the most out of your team. So what can we do in response to Parkinson's law? Well, here are some really simple ideas. A lot of this is simple. Setting clear deadlines is really the key. And we find that accountants are pretty good when it comes to filings and financial reporting because they're sort of built-in deadlines. The regulator helps us with that. But maybe the parts of that process we're not as good at. When do we need the data from the client in order to meet the deadline that we are focused on? Also, remember, running an effective client accounting business is not just about getting the work done. It's about reaching out to our clients and keeping them satisfied, looking for new opportunities, making sure they'll stay with us. And that is something for which we can have deadlines. Some of our clients will reach out to their A-class clients monthly, weekly in some cases. That might be a phone call, it might be a visit, but this will be systematized and there will be deadlines for it. What about our planning work? Some accountants will get halfway through the season and say, hey, we should have done more planning. Let's do some planning now in terms of the staffing we need, the budgets for our jobs, forecasting time and cash and so on. And then most businesses have operational jobs to do as well. It could be the upgrade of the software or training on that software and so on, which unless there's a deadline, why would we address those things. Other internal processes, accounts payable, contract renewals, etc. And then strategic initiatives should be scheduled. If it's your goal to acquire another business or to launch a new service or to hire a client relationship manager, that should be scheduled. There should be deadlines for everything. Otherwise, Parkinson's law will come and take its course and it will compromise our productivity. Chronotypes. This is kind of fun. And I refer you, if you're interested in this topic, to the Daniel Pink is the guy's name, The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing. There's a whole lot here. I cannot do justice to it today, but basically we're talking about an internal clock that governs our focus, our creativity, and when we work best at different times of the day. And it suggests that we have troughs and peaks, times when we are highly productive and less productive. And this helps us to decide what kinds of work we should be doing at what time to maximize our productivity. Now, the book refers to these phases, and I urge you to read this if you have interest. But think of morning people or so-called larks. You may know people who get up at 4 a.m. and they do a huge amount of work before it's even breakfast time. The most common group tend to get up later than that, and they have a fairly productive morning, but their afternoons are less productive. And then we have those kind of night people. Remember the people at university who started studying at 1 a.m. and went through to 5 a.m. before the exam, right? So again, I don't want to oversimplify the important work of Mr. Pink, but sounds like Cluedo. But if we can think in terms of these tendencies and feel where we fit into those, we can make some important decisions. You know, what was fascinating to me is that the analytical tasks, which require quite a lot of brain power and focus, and in an accounting sense, often this is the preparation of complex returns, are often best tackled when we're at our peak, right? We need to have our brains really well mobilized to do that work. However, creative tasks, where we're brainstorming, where we're thinking of abstract, amorphous ideas and coming up with concepts and so on, might be best tackled when we're in a trough, right? When we're not at our peak, which is really interesting to me. And this is a very well-researched idea that Mr. Pink has come up with, and I urge you to take a look at that if you're interested. Here's another concept, deep work. If you're familiar with Cal Newport, his books are really interesting. I'm going to actually mention two of the things that he's been working on here, which I think are quite powerful. This deep work idea is how we can work without distraction. And he talks about this thing called a flow state. And it's one of those ideas that you know it when you feel it, right? It may be difficult to describe, but when you are in that flow state, you're completely immersed in the task and work feels effortless. It almost feels fun. And how then can we get into this flow state at will? That's the key question, which Mr. Newport covers in his book. And here are some simple ideas. Again, there's a lot more to be said on this topic, but what we first need to do is commit to starting and completing a task within a certain time frame where we will have no distractions or interruptions. And the tasks that are suited to this are relatively challenging tasks. We would use this for that complex tax return we talked about before, or perhaps for writing the newsletter that we need to write. It's somewhat challenging. If it's too simple, our brain will become distracted anyway. If it's too difficult, we might not be able to follow through on this. So we commit to completing this challenging task, and there should be a very clear, defined goal. So, hey, I'm going to work on a few complex tax returns for the next couple of hours is not a clearly defined goal, but I'm going to complete my opinion for this particular client on this particular matter in the next hour is sufficiently clear. And the more clarity, the better. We cannot maintain this state, according to Mr. Newport, for more than 3 hours. And for most people, it's more likely to be 1 or 1.5 hours. So we can't do this all day. But most importantly, perhaps we need to remove distractions. Did you know, and this is researched as well, that if people tend to get distracted every few minutes, but to get back into that flow state or that area of focus might take us around 23 minutes. Now, one thing we can do to get better at this is to create habits around it. For example, perhaps you always work in the same location when you want to be in this flow state. Perhaps you have music accompanying this period, and maybe you choose the same time of day. That makes sense, right? If we are thinking of those chronotypes that we talked about before. Another piece of work by Mr. Newport is the idea of slow productivity. And this is really, if you think about the term slow productivity, in a world where it's rush, 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 I've got so much to do, I'm so busy, sorry, I can't talk now, I've got to move, hey, I've got another call coming in that world, he argues that if we can take a longer term view, something like the craftsman who focuses on quality and continuous improvement to attain the status of a master, if we can focus more like that, we will in the long term create more productivity. In the meantime, we have to look at what he calls shallow work, which is not cognitively demanding, and we need to do that all in batches, and because we can do that when we're not distracted. He also argues this idea of productive meditation, which is combining some kind of physical activity and focusing on a well-defined problem, perhaps a long walk or using the treadmill, etc., and the importance of eliminating distractions. And he relates back to his work on deep work when he talks about slow productivity. Prioritization is really important. Sometimes, in order to become a craftsman, a long-term master of something, we need to focus only on the things that matter, and that might involve neglecting the less critical tasks. The more accountable we can be in this journey, the more likely we're to succeed. And that's about telling people what we're going to do. By the end of today, I expect to do this. By the end of the week, I expect to do this. I'm now creating accountability, working to deadlines to overcome Parkinson's laws we talked about before. And here's a really interesting idea, turning some of our work into rituals or systems, right? This relates to those processes, those checklists, those timelines that we talked about already, right? Instead of making it up as you go along, because a craftsman doesn't make it up. A craftsman is usually following some kind of methodology. There may be some room for creativity, but they're following a methodology. And the more we can do that, the more we can benefit from slow productivity. The other thing is to try and be in control of the workload that you have. If you are constantly allowing new projects to fall on your lap and just taking them on, you're probably going to have compromised productivity. But if you can be in control, let's call it pull-based management of your time, you have a better chance of managing your time and boosting productivity. Pareto, all of you have come across this. Sometimes we think of this as the 80-20 rule. Interestingly, he was a mathematician in Italy, and his initial studies in the late 1800s were around the ownership of real estate in Italy. And that's where he started to formulate this idea that 80% of the real estate is owned by 20% of the people. And we have used that rule in all kinds of areas. So in a business, we talk about 20% of our effort producing 80% of the results, or the reverse being true as well, 80% of our effort producing 20% of the results. So what can we do in accounting? It's pretty obvious, but let me mention a few things. I mean, get some work off your plate with the 20% of clients that are consuming 80% of your time. They're not productive for you. Get rid of them, or get that work off your plate if that's not what you should be doing. And conversely, spend quality time with the productive clients. They're the ones that make referrals. They want more service from you. There's upselling opportunities and so on. And I talked about complaints earlier, and we often find, accountants who care deeply about their clients are over-responsive to complaints. But the fact is that you're going to get complaints no matter what you do. So let's be hypersensitive to those complaints from our A-list clients, but less concerned about those from our C-list clients. And likewise, when we're selling, let's focus on the ones that are likely to become A-list clients. This is also an internal idea. In your teams, you have some team members who are super high performers. They're aligned with your organization. They want to be there. They're excited about the future. They're highly invested. That's where we want to spend 80% of our time. You also have people that are wasting your time that are not pulling their weight, that don't really want to be there, and that are going to drag the organization down. And we need to take care of that separately, but we don't want to spend 80% of our time with them. And here's a really interesting idea, I think, which is we as individuals, if we are focused, if we are spending 80% of the time on stuff that we enjoy, whatever that means to you, family, exercising, travel, then we are more likely to be more fulfilled and we will perform better in the workspace as well. So there are some ideas on how we can apply Pareto's law. What about the concept of stress? This is so often written about, and it's omnipresent in many of the things we read and see, and people talk about it a lot. What is stress? Mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or demanding circumstances. But what we need to remember here is there is some good stress, because sometimes humans are wired, in fact, the entire animal kingdom is wired, so that stress is something which propels us to do better in certain times. It can be a source of inspiration, motivation, and actually enhanced performance. So the question is not how do we eliminate stress, but how do we harness it so that we get rid of prolonged stress, which simply causes us anxiety and confusion and low concentration, but manage the good stress in the best possible ways. I want to share, we do a lot of work with clients in this area, and I want to share some quotes from accountants. Most of the things we've talked about today have come from accountants and the theory that we've discussed. And here are some examples. So stress management, breathing. I repeat, a deep inhale followed by a short inhale, then a long exhale. So this accountant spoke about when they're feeling stressed, particularly in a tax season, how they just take a little bit of time out and manage their breathing for a while. And they said that has really good impact. Some people talk about the intense focus, and a lot of accountants are looking at screens a lot of the time, and apparently there's science around how our pupils dilate when we're under stress. But if we can reverse that and look at things a long way away for a while, we can actually overcome stress, at least in the view of this accountant. Some accountants learned things about themselves, in this case around teeth grinding. Many will acknowledge the value of exercise. And this accountant actually invested in his under-the-desk treadmill, but still wants to do more exercise. Exercise is a good stress reliever, of course. And, sometimes we just simply need reminders to take actions to manage our stress a little better. And this particular accountant uses Post-it notes for that, to say that's time to take a walk. I have a colleague who has one of those Apple Watches which tells her to stand up periodically, and that's one of the ways in which stress can be managed, I'm told. Now, if you're thinking about, well, yeah, that's all very well, but I am under stress, I would encourage you to ask these questions. Can you stand back and take a look at how stress is impacting you? Think of yourself as a third party and peer in to your persona and see how often does it happen? When does it happen? What are the triggers? And has this changed over time? Because it probably has. The stress you feel now may be worse or better than what it was a year ago. Why is that? What are the triggers? Some of them will be micro factors, like a particular client could trigger you, but some of them could be macro factors, like your economic position or a relationship, and so on. And here's a really interesting question. What are you stressing about anyway? And does it even matter? What if these things, what the things you're worried about, what if they went one way, A, or they went the other way, B? What would the difference be in your life? That's a really good question to ask yourself. And sometimes we're worrying unreasonably about the things we don't understand, in which case we should stop stressing, but seek to understand those things so we can manage them better. And you might find that there are some positives in your stress as well. We said that there's good stress. So what successes have you had? The time that you were lumped with a whole lot of work you didn't anticipate and it was complex, but you brilliantly navigated through that to do a great job for clients, and you felt really good about it afterwards, and it advanced your career, your knowledge, it was good for the business, etc. And again, none of us work in isolation. So how does stress, how is it impacted by your interactions with other people? This could be both positive or negative. We have a client who calls her mum every couple of days, and she says, I really feel good about that. Her mum, who's aging, but they have a really good chat, and that's one way. It's a stress buster, if you like. And of course, the opposite can be the case. And what are your stress busting activities? Do you need a blowout weekend from time to time, or do you travel? Do you go away? Is it exercise? What is it for you? And then how can we make those into habits? Because we shouldn't have to wait to feel really stressed. What you might find is if we create habits with those stress busting activities, we can actually avoid stress in the first place. Finally, thank you for your patience, by the way. All of this, I feel, is to some degree about mindset. Here's what I mean by that. We can try to be more productive, but what's the point of being more productive if we're just going to stack the time we free up with more stuff to do, right? What we should be seeking to do is getting back time that we can allocate to what we want to do, right? Not adding more to the list. So I don't want to leave you with a lot of methods which say, hey, I'll make you more productive, and then you can just be as busy doing the same old stuff. That's not what we should think about, because if we do that, if you're a business owner particularly, we end up burnt out. We feel that we don't have freedom. We have no interest in growing the business because that just means more work. Why would we do that, right? So this is not what we want. And the mindset shift I'm talking about here is much of what we've talked about is efficiency, doing the work more effectively. But what if we started thinking about effectiveness, which is more about knowing what to work on? It's prioritizing. It's getting really clear on what matters to us. It's reflecting on what we care about. It's delegating, as we said up front, right? It's about building teams that can take on things and the systems and the checklists, right? So I don't want us to ignore that. I want us to think about that, because if we know what to work on, we will make more progress in this area than simply getting better at doing the work. Please think about that. As I say, we all have the same number of hours in the day. Here are some thoughts that accountants shared with me. I asked a couple in the last couple of weeks, hey, I'm doing a webinar on this, and what are your thoughts on managing your time and boosting productivity? And here's some quick ideas that came from accountants in North America and some in Australia and New Zealand. Some said identify the behaviors which sabotage productivity, right? So what holds you back? What is it that makes you less productive than you want to be? And customizing routines. This is the calendar blocking kind of idea that relate to your working style. Why not build things around the way you work to the extent that that's possible? The idea of single tasking, not multitasking. Accountants often don't deal well with lots of open ideas. Getting more sleep, eating well, and getting outside. Simple ideas which are human ideas which will help us in this area. Taking breaks because we simply cannot for a protracted period maintain high productivity, and then using a timer. We have an accountant, West Coast of the United States, who has one on his desk, and he religiously uses this to manage what he's doing and to think very intelligently about how he's using his time. Setting a daily priority. Today, one of our clients talks about when she drives into work, she has a lengthy commute, and she says, yeah, but I use that time to set my daily priority. And when she drives home, she evaluates how successfully she completed that. Talking to other people. You're not alone. Maybe it's people in your office, but maybe it's family members, maybe it's colleagues, friends, and so on. And hearing their stories as well, because that helps to energize us. Building systems, checklists, processes, goals, targets. We talked about that. Listening to music is a stress buster. Avoiding social media. What a disaster social media is. And in the next 2 weeks, I don't know what date you're watching this, it seems to be amplified and magnified. If we could save time there, I think it's not just the time that's saved, but it's also the energy and the mentality that can be improved. And then pursuing an exciting mission. What is it that excites you in the next week, month, years, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, right? If we can make that something that is exciting for us, we have a good chance of wanting to work more productively and getting exactly what we want. I appreciate your time today. If you're interested, please attend some more of the Panalytics events. They're on our website. If you would like to consider mentoring, if it's the good time for you, we could discuss that. By the way, we run short courses. We have one coming up on email management. We're just picking one of those things to get back time and increase productivity. This will unfold over 3 weeks. I won't go through all of this now, but what's the current email approach, implementing best practices, and that breaks down into a lot of activities and ideas that we can do. We're running this in the latter part of November, early December, as a kind of preface to next year. If you'd like more information, by the way, there are live sessions. There's also work that you can do via our Learning Hub as well. And finally, speaking of Learning Hub, please consider, if you're not already a member there, registering for the Learning Hub. Let me show you quickly. I think you can see the Learning Hub now. Today, we've discussed what you would find in developing teams, managing for success. And here is a section on productivity. There's leadership, productivity, compensation, all kinds of things that accountants would consider as they manage their businesses. But here's what we discussed today. So you see a list of 17 assets, learning bites, which have information on everything we discussed: delegation, daily huddle, calendar blocking. You see this icon here. That means there's a video explanation. So if you wanted to go deeper into anything that we've discussed today, you'll find a video on that particular topic, as well as some written text in this particular section. If you like, you can search for anything, deep work, calendar blocking in the search block here, or feel free to ask our clone, which just in the same way as you would use ChatGPT, you'd put your question in here: what is deep work, or how do I do calendar blocking? And you will get not just a response to that, but a response which is supported by citations, which will take you directly to the materials which might help you in that area. So this is a clone in the Panalytics environment, which might help you to build. And by the way, everything I've showed you here is free. You don't have to pay for this. You just have to register. If you're interested in our future events which are coming up, you can find those here. So please have a look at that. Meanwhile, I'm back in the presentation, and Kim is alert to any questions that you might have. I'd be happy to discuss any of these ideas with you that we've gone through today. But I'm going to close off now, and I'm going to wish you very well with your time management and productivity boosting journey. I hope you have found something here that you can take action on. Maybe this is the beginning of your journey and you want to study further on this. That's absolutely fine. Please use the Learning Hub, and please feel free to get in touch with us at any time. Meanwhile, wishing you a brilliant day. Thank you for your time, and have fun boosting your productivity. Bye.
Today's event has ended. To earn CPE, go to earmark.app or scan the QR code on the screen. Then log in or create your free account. Search for the course by tapping on the magnifying glass icon on the home screen and then entering the name of this event. It takes a few days to make the course, so if you're attending this event live, keep an eye out for an email letting you know when the course is available. Pass the quiz to earn your CPE, then tap the button to email yourself a certificate. Stay tuned for more events from Earmark. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.